What you are about to hear is a true account submitted to Mr. DarkWhisper. A story that began with a simple warning and ended with something no one in that mountain town will ever forget. Before we begin, if this is your first time here, welcome. Hit that like button, tap subscribe, and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story. Now, turn off the lights. And whatever you do, don't touch the skulls. There are rules in the mountains. Most of them make sense. Stay on the trail, respect the wildlife, be home before dark. But there is one rule that nobody ever explains. Nobody tells you why. They just look you dead in the eyes, steady, serious. And they say it like a warning passed down through generations. If you find the skulls, don't touch them. I didn't listen. And now, every single night, something stands on my porch and laughs. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. We read every single one. I moved to the Appalachian Mountains looking for a fresh start. I had spent my whole life in cities. The noise, the crowds, the concrete pressing in from every direction. I wanted the opposite of all of it. A house with forest for a backyard, neighbors a mile away. The listing kept using the word quiet, and every single time I read it, I agreed. The town at the base of the mountain was small. The kind of small where a new face gets noticed before you have even finished parking your car. Most of the locals were friendly enough. They asked where I was from, what I did for work. Normal questions. Until I met Mr. Faraday. He owned the only grocery store in town. Quiet man, steady hands. The kind of person who measured every word before spending it. I asked him about hiking in the forest behind my new property. He bagged my groceries slowly and stared at me the entire time he answered. The forest is perfectly safe during the day, he said. Just make sure you are back before the sun goes down. I asked what I should watch out for. He listed off black bears, moose, wild boar. Then he said wolves. I stopped moving. I told him I thought wolves were extinct in the Appalachians. He didn't answer that. He just kept bagging groceries. Before I left, he looked me straight in the eye. 1 second longer than felt comfortable. And he said, "If you see skulls or bones out there, do not touch them. Go around them, leave them exactly where they are." I nodded, thanked him, told myself he was just a superstitious old man who had spent too many years in a small town with nothing better to think about. I should have listened. The first few weeks, I hiked in the late morning. There was an old trail behind the house, overgrown but manageable, and I fell in love with it immediately. Songbirds, wild ferns, pale light filtering down through the canopy in long gold shafts. The silence out there was a different kind of silence than the city. It felt alive. It felt like it was breathing. When my work schedule changed, I started going out in the late afternoon instead. Still made it back before dark, but I began noticing things. Strange scratches running down the trunks of trees, long, deep gouges, like something had dragged its claws slowly through the bark, not rushing, but deliberate. Patient. Week by week, those scratched trees appeared closer and closer to the house. Then the birds stopped singing, not gradually, not the natural quiet of dusk settling in. They stopped all at once, mid-afternoon, like every living creature in that forest had received some signal I could not hear and obeyed it without question. I told myself it was just the seasons changing, nights getting longer, normal things. I was wrong. I found the first skull on a Tuesday. It was sitting right in the middle of the trail. A deer skull, bleached bone white and cracked with age, the eye sockets dark and hollow. It had not been there on my way up the mountain. I was absolutely certain of it. I had walked right over that spot not 40 minutes earlier. I called out, looked between the trees in every direction. Nothing moved. Nothing answered. I knew I should leave it alone. Mr. Faraday's warning crossed my mind clearly. The exact words, the exact look on his face when he said them. But something about it sitting directly in the center of my path felt deliberate. Pointed. Like a message left by someone who knew exactly when I would be coming back down. I grabbed a stick, threaded it through one of the eye sockets, and tossed the skull off into the trees. Dropped the stick, walked home, told myself it was nothing. If this story's giving you chills, hit that like button and drop a comment telling us where you are watching from. We want to hear from you. The howling started that same night. It dragged me out of a dead sleep. A long, low, solitary wail rising from somewhere deep in the forest. The kind of sound that gets into your chest before your brain has even decided what it is. I lay there in the dark, listening to it, telling myself it was just a coyote, just an animal. Nothing unusual. For the next 7 nights, I woke up to that same sound. Always somewhere between 2 and 3 in the morning, always from the same direction, out behind the house, somewhere in the blackness of the trees. Never closer, never farther, just there. I asked about it in town. Nobody had heard a thing. Not Mr. Faraday, not the pharmacist, not the waitress at the diner, who smiled at me the same way you smile at someone you feel a little sorry for, and told me to keep my doors locked and leave it at that. I started sleeping with music on, told myself I was fine. I was not fine. The second skull appeared a week later. This one was massive. A moose skull with a full rack of antlers still attached, white as chalk, perfectly preserved. Positioned dead center on the trail with the hollow eye sockets angled directly toward me, as if it had been placed there by a careful hand and adjusted until the angle was exactly right. I walked around it, exactly like Mr. Faraday had said, went home, locked the doors. The next afternoon it was back, same skull, same spot, same empty eyes watching me come down the trail. I walked around it again. The third time, I had had enough. I grabbed it with both hands and threw it as hard as I could into the trees. Didn't watch where it landed. Turned and ran home and locked every door and every window in the house without stopping to breathe. Standing in my kitchen, shaking, I looked out through the glass into the tree line. I couldn't see anything, but I felt something looking back. That night, I didn't hear howling. I heard the porch creak, the slow, deliberate groan of old wood bending under weight. One board, then another. Something moving carefully, like it knew the layout of the porch and was choosing each step. Then came the growl, low, guttural, right outside my bedroom window. Animal, but wrong. Like two sounds occupying the same frequency, layered on top of each other. One that belonged to something living, one that didn't. The growling stopped. Then the howl hit. So loud and so close that my windows shook in their frames, and I felt the vibration pass through the mattress, through my chest, and into my teeth. I ran to the bathroom, the one room in the house with no windows. I locked the door, climbed into the bathtub, pulled my knees to my chest, and did not move until my 7 a.m. alarm rang, and pale morning light crept under the door. It came back every night. The creak of the porch, the growl at the window, the howl that rattled the glass. Same pattern. Every single time, like something following a ritual it had performed many times before. On the 4th night, I drove into town before the store even opened. I sat in the parking lot and waited, running on nothing but fear and caffeine. When Mr. Faraday arrived, he took one look at me and said I looked like I hadn't slept in a week. Something keeps showing up at my house, I told him. I think it's the wolf. Something in him went very still. He sent his cashier to watch the front and walked me out the back door, lit a cigarette, exhaled slowly into the cold morning air. I told you to mind the bones. I told him everything. The deer skull moved with a stick, the moose skull thrown 3 times, the scratched trees getting closer to the house, the howling, the porch, the growl at the window. He listened without interrupting once. When I finished, he asked what had happened the very first night, the night I moved the deer skull. I admitted that is when the howling first started. But it had been distant, easy to dismiss. He shook his head slowly. It still counts. He told me what I had to do. Buy the reddest, bloodiest cuts of meat in the store. Wait until sundown. Carry them out on 8 to the trail. Lay them on the path. And the instant they were down, run. Do not slow down. Do not look back. Not for any sound. Not for any feeling. And it will stop? I asked. This is you making amends, he said. It does not mean you will be forgiven. I told him I didn't understand, that I hadn't done anything wrong, that I had just moved a few bones. He looked at me for a long moment and stubbed out the cigarette. You showed disrespect and acknowledged them. In a place like this, that is more than enough. Before we go further, comment your location below right now and subscribe to Mr. DarkWhisper. You will not want to miss what comes next. At sundown, I walked back into the forest. The trail felt completely different at that hour. The trees looked wrong, too close together, shadows pooling fast and dark between them. The claw marks covered almost every trunk now, stretching all the way back to the edge of my property. Some of the gouges were fresh. About 10 minutes in, I stopped and laid the meat on the path. The blood soaked straight through the butcher paper immediately and spread dark across the soil. I stood up, looked once at the silent wall of trees surrounding me, and turned for home. I'd taken maybe 5 steps when the growl came from directly behind me. Low, close, getting closer, heavy footfalls hitting the ground, getting faster. I ran. I heard it hit the meat, a wet, violent tearing. Then a brief silence. Then the footsteps resumed, faster than before, faster than I could run. I reached the house and threw myself through the back door. Barely got the lock turned before something slammed into the wood from the other side with full force. The door bowed inward. I pressed my back against it. It slammed again. I held. Then it moved to the front. I heard it rounding the side of the house, and I sprinted for the front door half a second before the handle began to turn. I hit the door with everything I had and shoved the deadbolt home. I went to the back window, and I looked. It moved on 4 legs. But they were not animal legs. The hands were spread wide, long black claws dragging against the porch boards. Black fur matted parts of the skin in ragged patches. In other places, pale human flesh showed through, stretched thin and wrong over the angles of the bones beneath. The back legs bent in the wrong direction with every step. A loud, wet snapping sound filled the air as the bones twisted and readjusted beneath the skin. I could see them moving under there, shifting, flexing, like something still trying to decide what shape it wanted to be. The head was the worst. The muzzle stretched far too long, longer than any wolf's, longer than anything I had ever seen. The jaw could open wider than anything natural should allow. When it did, I saw the teeth, black and curved and far too many. Packed too close together, the gums dark and wet. When it closed its mouth, blood oozed out between the fangs and ran down the chin in slow, deliberate lines. The eyes were red, glowing. It saw me through the glass. It stopped moving completely, slowly, with something that felt almost like recognition. The lips peeled back into something that resembled a smile. Wide, patient, knowing. The growling stopped entirely. And then it started laughing. A sharp, high-pitched human laugh, coming from a throat that had no business making that sound. I looked past it into the tree line. Red eyes, dozens of them, pairs, perfectly still in the spaces between the trees, not moving, just watching the house, watching me. One by one, they all started laughing. The sound built and layered until it filled the air completely, pressing against the walls of my house like something solid trying to get through. I stumbled back from the window, ran to the bathroom, locked the door, sat in the tub with my knees pulled to my chest, and did not move until morning. When I finally stepped outside, I found the porch covered in skulls. Dozens of them, every shape and size, arranged so there was barely room to step between them. Some bleached white, some black with decay, some still wet and dark red. One of them was human. I stepped carefully over every single skull on the way to my car. Everyone. Then I drove straight into town and found Mr. Faraday. He listened to the whole account without a word. When I finished, he looked more disappointed than afraid. I told you not to look back. Now you have made a real mess. Not just for you, for everyone. They all heard them last night. He told me about the wolves of the Appalachians, what the town had always called them. Said they had a name for what I had done. Said this was not the first time. That a hunting party was gathering at the diner at sundown, and I had better be there. I asked if people sometimes didn't come back from these hunts. All the time, he said, but so do most. They gave me a shotgun at the diner, a crash course on how to load it and what to aim for. The bullets were special, blessed, soaked in holy water by the local priest, who had been doing this long enough that he didn't flinch when they brought the shells to him. I am writing this now, before the sun sets, because hunting accidents happen all the time in the mountains. If anyone comes asking about me, or anyone else who does not come home, that is what the town will tell them. I can already hear them out there. The sun is still above the tree line, and they are already laughing. And that is where the account ends. If this story kept you up tonight, drop a comment right now. Tell us where in the world you are watching from. We read every single one. Like this video. Subscribe to Mr. DarkWhisper. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a new story. New horror narrations drop every week. Stay safe, stay indoors after dark, and whatever you find out there in the dark, don't touch the skulls.